Smart Capital, CrowdFundMe, and WeAreStarting basically signed a merger agreement to create a new listed group for SME finance. We closed an agreement where two other companies, Smart Capital and WeAreStarting, are being injected, so to speak, into the public company.
Italy was one of the first countries, I believe, to adopt a crowdfunding regulation. So I'm not that surprised that there is consolidation happening in the market. There are many operators playing there.
They seem to work toward a clause which is called the Whitewash clause, where essentially minority shareholder agrees of the fact that this kind of public tender doesn't have to happen. They're fully aware. So the dynamic is like simpler. So hitting the beginning of February, there is some movement, not as big as the beginning of the year, but a few things are, we need to pay attention to a few things. Nick, what is your feel of the closing of the first month and the beginning of the second month of the year?
Let's say that January was a good month, actually. Among the other starting months for the last few years, was one of the best. Again, remember that I only record announced deals, so we are possibly seeing most of end of year activities in terms of things that have been announced, and I believe there's always some lag between operations and announcements. Last week was a bit of a slow one, just a couple of these in the health space and kind of fintech area. So traditional seed round, couple of millions each. So not much recently.
Not much, but there are a few pretty, complex, but at the same time, like interesting, things happening. I would start with the reverse merger. So Smart Capital, CrowdFundMe, and WeAreStarting basically signed a merger agreement to create a new listed group for SME finance. So that's not something you see every day. So essentially, for the listener, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick. So essentially, CrowdFundMe has been listed for a while on the Euronext Milan exchange, so the public Italian market. And essentially what is happening is that they closed an agreement where two other companies, Smart Capital, part of Smart Capital and WeAreStarting, are being injected, so to speak, into the public company. So essentially, what is interesting is that they are basically making like a listed company that specializes on basically fundraising from the startup to small and medium enterprise in one big block, which is publicly listed. So this is my first take on this. I don't know, Nick, if you have a different approach.
Well, no, I agree. There are aggregating different operators that have been playing solo up to now. Most of them were started when crowdfunding was quite on the rise as a term a few years ago. Italy was one of the first countries, I believe, to adopt a crowdfunding regulation for equity crowdfunding, and that spurred a lot of growth of platforms and opportunities and hype around the tool, which I'm not following closely, but the impression is that it has been slowing down recently in terms of interest and ability to collect opportunities and raise. So I'm not that surprised that there is consolidation happening in the market. There are many operators playing there, in Italy in particular. So, and I think it's not wrong to change the point of view from equity crowdfunding to widen the view to a broader equity platform for SMEs.
Yeah, no, I agree completely, and I would say that this isn't really a fintech merger. Is more an attempt to build sort of a listed small and medium enterprise finance OS operating system, which basically combines a bunch of elements: advisory, capital raising, platform distribution. So that's pretty interesting, and pretty much we haven't seen that before. So very curious to see what's going to happen. There are a few elements, I think, in the deal which they kind of go more toward public market sort of dynamics rather than startup dynamics, which I think is interesting to mention. So one being this kind of sort of dynamic where companies are injected into a public listed company. And one interesting element is that by Italian regulation, basically by the Italian financial regulators, if there is a majority there, then according to rules, the majority should issue like a public tender to acquire minority stakes. And that's a protective sort of element to protect minority shareholder. What is interesting is that they're working, or they seem to work toward a clause which is called the Whitewash clause, where essentially minority shareholder agrees of the fact that this kind of public tender doesn't have to happen. They're fully aware. So the dynamic is like simpler. So there is a tiny mention in the article, and I think it's important to see that and interpret that, just because it's something that people might miss. But the idea is really to make the deal fluid, and there is already like a structure on how exactly stocks are being exchanged post merger. So that's interesting. But to avoid all the OPA dynamics, so the tender public offer, they're kind of playing with the governance and make sure the deal gets done very, very quickly. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. So, okay. So the regulation is basically there to protect minority shareholders from, things that they can't oppose or stop. That's the idea, right?
Exactly.
Right?
So it's
okay.
It's an article of the TUF, which is the official financial sort of public market merger guidebook. Let's call it like that. It's 106, Regulation 106, to protect minority shareholders. So basically, the public tender is triggered immediately if there is a majority one entering post-merger, unless there is this whitewash clause where the minority basically say, okay, I know these guys are going to be the majority. We don't have to do like a public offer. We're fine like that. Just to simplify. I thought it was interesting. And this basically speeds up the deal typically. So I thought it was cool. I'm not going to talk about price movements or projected elements. Here, I don't think the market haven't seen much of those deals. So it's probably difficult to price in a market reaction here, I would guess.
Yeah, so the CrowdFundMe is listed, but the title is thin. It's not a penny stock, but the market cap is a micro cap company. So I think there is not much to move over there. So the interest is little by design, but the important thing is the company coming out of this operation, what they will do on the market, how they will develop the strategy. So
I agree.
Nice.
The one-stop shop sort of structure and narrative, I think that's what's going to be interesting to check and see if it works actually, because that can really trigger, help companies from the startup phase up to like post scaling. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they use an interesting term, if you want, right? Permanent capital. So that's probably the key term. We've seen it. It's not so widely diffused in the sense of a financial instrument, but unlike a pure play VC or PE fund, private equity or venture capital, they have to return money to investors at some point in time and close the fund. Permanent capital doesn't have to. So it can stick around forever. Berkshire Hathaway.
Exactly.
Look at it in that way.
Exactly.
For private companies. So
interesting.
So that's interesting.
All right, moving on to the next news of last week, which is TeamSystem, big Italian player, essentially acquiring AIG Classic, which is sort of a smaller Spanish competitor. So TeamSystem has been essentially moving very fast to expand and following a plan of international expansion. And basically, what is interesting is that they are really buying distribution in a novel market. So AG Classic also provide solutions for accounting, especially for the Spanish market. So they have about 34,000 customers. It's not a huge company, it's 5.5 million in revenue with 55 employees. But what is interesting is that I think TeamSystem is really appreciating what is happening in Spain right now. And if you look into the number really quick, essentially a lot of digitization in the sort of invoicing space, public compliance for companies. So there is a big raise there on this kind of trend. So definitely a great move, definitely not a random play. It's definitely like well structured and really well put together, I would say.
No, they've been acquiring companies in Spain for quite a while now, so they're consolidating the presence there, and they're moving also to other countries. So the play is quite clear. So they become a more international player. That's the interesting bit, is by building deep roots country by country, not going wide and large immediately. So that's interesting.
Perfect. Yeah. So some people would say, reading some articles, that it's the Spanish gold rush for accounting software right now, because basically they're selling shovels because people need that, and that's what's happening. So let's see. Very interesting to see what's happened. I mean, TeamSystem is perfectly positioned to do that and to accommodate that. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Jack, should we mention probably the most successful kind of Italian adjacent company in the world right now? Just to mention, $10 billion net profit.
Yeah, go Nick. Absolutely. I leave it to you. Yeah.
I was thinking, you're always talking about, the usual names, and I'm not naming names in terms of big scale ups and big market movements. But then we have Tether, and we know it was launched by Paolo Ardoino. It has an Italian heart, and they just reported, $10 billion profit for last year.
Profits.
Profit. Yes, profit. We're not used to profit in our conversations, but $10 billion profit. That just let's leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, here a million questions come up, but definitely something to look. And the Tether has been like appearing in the news like once in a while, so that's really cool. But definitely that's a great result. Yeah, I mean. Very curious to see how the business model is evolving, and how maybe they're changing. But yeah, that's another episode. That would require a full episode for this kind of topic. So yeah, but good point, Nick. Absolutely awesome. All right, let's talk about Genenta, Nick. Genenta, that's super unexpected. So what happened, and let me just refer to the news. So Genenta is announcing a strategic transformation into biotech, defense, aerospace, and national security industrial consolidator. So essentially what started as a successful biotech company is now basically absorbing a lot of different elements related to national security. So they're really taking a big turn, which is, I don't know. I don't even know how to interpret that, honestly. Very interesting for sure. Some other elements is that they already essentially, they're already acquiring companies that are in the defense industry. So we were talking about this rifle company. That's also one of the elements, pretty far from what they've been doing. So the idea is to see exactly how the roll-up is going to work out together and what's going to happen. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, the market is definitely shifting toward sort of dual operators, people that work in both in the private sector, but also in the defense sector. You can see these kind of turns, but this is a pretty sharp turn, I would say.
Yeah, even though I agree with you totally, this is a big pivot. They also changed name. So moving from a product company, an R&D company in the biotech space to a buy and build kind of platform across different verticals. That's quite a change. But it was sometime in the making. From the article, you can read that the Predixia Foundation joined the Genenta as a strategic partner, right? Probably investor. I don't know. We should check what that means in terms of partnership. But the foundation is quite recent and focused on on supporting aerospace defense, all the strategic verticals. And the president and founder of the foundation is the same founder as Genenta. So Pierluigi Paracchi. So this was in the making. So there's of course, but there were signals out there already pointing at this direction. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what started like sort of a biotech driven company with a lot of hope is really changing to industrial cash flow plus national security. So that's a definitely, like, again, big turn. Very interesting to see what's going to happen. They're going to change the name. They already changed the name, so now it's called
Yeah.
Scientra Forge. And yeah, definitely interesting. Also, for the fact that the government kind of needs to intervene for the golden power rule, and so we'll see how exactly is gonna happen. So basically, for the listener, every deal that has like national security concerns, then the government can step in and either block or allow this kind of operation. So that's super interesting as well to check out. We haven't seen many golden power activated last year, so this year is probably kind of maybe this year we'll see like a little more.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I was looking at the article mentioning the foundation of Predixia Foundation. Sorry about the pun. And they were already talking about a listed vehicle making acquisitions. It was back in September 2025. So
Wow.
this was coming. Super interesting. And it says lots about the current feeling about public markets and governments around the environment and the geopolitics.
So there is a macro fear kind of feeding like sort of the dual use defense deals in more depth. So the macro situation, we haven't seen that in a few years, I would say. You're right. Like
no, you got this feeling, right? So the NATO fund, the interest into, a few years ago, dual use was untouchable. Yeah. Now it's almost, you're not doing dual use? Bad.
Wow.
So I mean, the wind changed 180 degrees. So it started blowing in the opposite direction just a few years ago. And I don't like the direction, but still, that's the time we live in. That's only my personal opinion.
No, that's a great point. And also in the media, like if people in the industry, in the startup industry, look into like X or Reddit or whatever, you have more and more present founders like being very vocal on starting project into sort of the military space, which I agree with you. 5 years ago, it would have been, like a suicide immediately. But now it's like, okay, perfect. There are funds, there are VC firms specializing in that. There is a market, and the government are putting money into that. So big market shift. I agree. Interesting.
Yeah. The world equilibrium is shifting toward a higher variance, higher higher risk if you want. But still, let's see.
Interesting.
Let's stay into micro, not macro.
Yeah. All right, Nick. Thank you so much for joining for this week's episode, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. Take care, and ciao everybody. See you in a week.